This content is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained on here constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer by Draper, Goren, Holm, or any third-party service to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments whatsoever. And last but not least, we have a very dear friend of ours, Pierre. He runs Blockchain Radio. He's a media partner of ours. And for everyone that is on this call or on this video chat and whoever's watching afterwards, you can catch the recording on Blockchain Radio. It's an awesome network. Highly recommend you check him out. So I guess the best way to get started is to go ahead and introduce yourself. We'll start with Alex, we'll move to Crystal, and we'll end with Jeff. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do in the space, how you got involved, and where you're at today, and what you're drinking.
Awesome. So I'll start with my drink, which is a Negroni. So red vermouth, Campari, and gin from just down the streets at our local wonderful gin distillery here. And so myself, I'm the co-founder of something called Bicameral Ventures, which is a venture platform based out of Toronto. We started up around 2.5 years ago now, although it feels like both 10 decades and about 6 seconds. And so I'm a reformed investment banker rescued from the big world of monster Canadian banks. And so, you know, I started out with Bank of Montreal, working on the mergers and acquisitions team, then their financial institutions group, then their fintech team, and then started essentially the crypto desk, if you want to call that, whatever that is within Canada's famously incredibly boring and slow institutions. And so realize you can't change the world, you can't do cool stuff, you can't really build what you want to do from within the walls of some of Canada's biggest institutions. So I partnered up with one of my good friends. We founded this venture capital platform, and essentially the main thesis of what we're building is the world and the technology that we're using today has never allowed us to connect, transact, interact, and really deal with each other more frequently on a more global nature, on a more global basis. But the institutions and the processes and the business models that we have today are still rooted in kind of the Middle Ages. They're essentially rooted in kind of our medieval culture. And as the technology gets faster and faster, our institutions and the things and the organizations and the points that we're driving towards with our tech are just falling farther and farther behind. And so there's this massive gap that's growing and growing and growing. And it's really, it's the stake of our kind of human integrity in a digital world is sort of at stake within this sort of massive technological gap that we have. And so we thought about this and really contextualized it as there's trillions of dollars to be gained or solved or released back into the world by solving this gap. But this gap has so many different facets to it. It's got paradigms, it's got technologies, it's got mindsets, it's got regulations. There's so many different pieces to it. And so starting a company to try and sort of take points out of that is really, really challenging to do. So what can we do? Let's start a venture platform and essentially create kind of we think about it almost as a collaborative protocol of a bunch of different projects and things that we're working on that are all generally pulling in the same direction and solving different point solutions, but all organized in the same way. So we founded this initial venture fund, which was very focused on the blockchain world, which obviously is a fantastic technology to start solving some of this digital sovereignty challenges that we have today. And so we raised about $15 million. We deployed it across projects in Canada, the US, Israel, Europe, Asia, all throughout kind of late 2018, early 2019. And really focused on building from the full stack up, so down from the core protocol all the way up to the actual experience layer, and putting all of our projects in loose partnership and collaboration with each other, all to solve each other's problems, and all with the idea of, in order to actually solve these goals, we need to not have 1 million people or 100 million people on blockchain. We need to have 2 billion people and not know that they're using blockchain. and they need to be adopting as grandmas who are just doing something that's viscerally better than the experiences that exist today. But we don't have the full tooling layer built out yet today to be able to actually get those people on board. So let's start at the bottom and build all the way up this stack. So we deployed our venture fund in kind of late 2019, mid 2019, and we were in the middle of raising for fund 2, and we really sort of went back and said, hey, there's a bunch of really specific, non-sexy solutions that need to be built that don't exist today. And I know, Jeff, you're working in some of a similar vein on some of this stuff that just are blocking and tackling table stakes for the infrastructure that needs to be in place to move all of this stuff forward. So what we're doing today is we partnered with a couple of pretty substantial players in both the exchange industry and in the data industry as well, to actually build out some solutions that start to tackle these specific pieces and really help move our whole paradigm and our whole portfolio forward. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can dive into. We're working on a lot of different things today. I mentioned to Adam off the top, we're working on a golf app that is hopefully going to be, alpha is going to be done in the next 3 hours or so. So, but all sort of tied into the same vein, and there's lots of stuff to dive into there. So I'll shut up there, and really looking forward to all of this.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alex. Crystal, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to this amazing blockchain booze. I feel really social right now, and it's really exciting just reading the chat, just to feel like we're all hanging out here and, you know, getting together. It's been such a weird year, but, you know, this year has been a really big opportunity to keep building. I see Zach's in the chat here mentioning SenseChat. So I'm Crystal Rose. I'm the CEO of SenseChat. Our company is called Make Sense Labs. Actually, we build different types of blockchain tools, but our most famous one is SenseChat, which is a blockchain-based messenger. And we power that with the Sense token. We started building these tools early on as a solution for privacy and just a better way of connectivity through chat. You know, today we live in a world of a lot of surveillance, a lot of spying, and blockchain is an interesting solution, which is sort of counterintuitive because it says that it's transparent, right? So we have this sort of like immutable ledger that has a lot of transparency, but it can also provide security, and it can also provide privacy. And so we're building that today. We're helping people connect in the same way that Bitcoin allows you, or any crypto really allows you, to have a peer-to-peer transaction. We're making a peer-to-peer messenger. We don't think that people should have an intermediary in the process. No one should be storing your conversations or spying on them or listening to them. Just like you don't need a bank holding your money before it goes to the other party and potentially doing something with it. That's what's happening to our conversational data today. So we wanted to marry up the great parts of blockchain technology with the messaging space and to have it powered and be more fun and have something else to do. We put a token layer on top of that too, so you can mine tokens while you chat. And that just makes it more interesting for the whole community to be engaged, but it also helps us to keep it more secure. So every day that the humans log in, we're preventing bots and we're preventing spam. We call SenseChat the messenger with no BS for that reason. You know, and I've just been, so I've been in crypto for a really long time. And I, like back when it was called cryptography, before cryptocurrency. So there was this technology that was actually about, you know, math and the transfer of data and protecting things. I've also been in AI and machine learning. So that was a big core component of my last company. And this is where we are today. I think I got my first Bitcoin. I actually won at a hackathon in 2014. I built a Bitcoin app at the launch hackathon, the one that is run in San Francisco by Jason Calcanis. And that's also my saddest story ever as well, because we won, as a group, we won 200 Bitcoin, and it went on a wallet on my phone called Bread Wallet, and I lost my phone. And that is when I learned about private keys and the idea of a trustless system and you know, responsibility and ownership of our own stewarding our own data and our own keys. So that was a little bit of a lesson. Little painful back then, a lot more painful today. But you know, The evolution has been really incredible, and I've been super fortunate to be alongside of some of the greatest builders in the space, watching projects go from the ground up, like Ethereum and like now Polkadot even, and like EOS. I was one of the Genesis nodes on EOS as well, so I run a blockchain node operator called Shios. We put the She in EOS. We're an all-female team that operates nodes that mine crypto that use proof of stake or delegated proof of stake. So I'm super happy to chat about all of these things. I love geeking out on mining and on, all things crypto, but also blockchain just in general as a technology and where it's going to take us.
Crystal, sorry to jump in. I didn't realize you ran Shios. I know Amy and Pam a little bit from a couple of conferences last year. I absolutely adore them. I haven't caught up with them in way too long, but I'm curious what they're doing with all of their stuff in Wyoming and Palantir and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, super badass women. We put together a team of venture capitalists, technologists, women who are just getting into crypto that are big in their other fields like musician. And the reason that we did it actually is because when you're mining crypto off of a network, you're bringing in a lot of that revenue, and usually people just put it in their pockets. And what we decided to do is take it and put it into scholarships for women in technology. So on the EOS chain alone, being a Genesis node, we were throwing off like $100,000 of EOS a month at the beginning, and it was great. And all of this is coming in. So what do we do with it? We want to put it back out into the community, and we wanted to set an example. Obviously, the exchanges came in and things changed and voting changed, and so we're no longer in the top ranking, but Block One voted for us, and we were still holding on for a really long time on that chain.
Nice. Love it. Last but not least, Jeff, take it away. And I know I want you to plug also TrustSwap and tell us what that is as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, super happy to be here. Honored to be here. First off, I'm not going on the booze thing right now, just water. I honestly, I've been in dungeon mode right now. I just haven't even left. I'm living in a basement, just going full grind mode for the last month. It's been totally unhealthy, but incredibly enjoyable at the same time. So I haven't even stocked myself with booze. I've just been getting the Uber Eats on. But yeah, so my name's Jeff. I got into crypto when Ethereum was kind of getting a little bit of traction. Somebody introduced it to me, and I was just blown away by the concept of being able to distribute power away from corporations and back to the people. That was the thing that really hooked it to me. I just really realized when I looked at that ecosystem that holy shit, we can really take our current financial, monetary, socioeconomic structures and we don't have to fight it. We don't have to flip it on its head, but we can just flip them the middle finger and say, we're going to go build our own over here. We have a better idea. And for me, I feel like voting with your dollar is one of the most important things you can do, and voting with your time and your energy and your attention. And so I saw this entire ecosystem as a really big opportunity to do that. So kind of my journey into crypto started with just creating a Facebook group called Ethereum Investing with me and 12 of my buddies. And before we knew it, that group grew to 100 people, 1,000 people, 30,000 people. We opened another group called Cryptocurrency Investing. That's sitting at 160,000. The whole network now is at 1 point whatever million people in these groups. And then from there, I just realized, Facebook sucks. It really sucks. And at the time, Steemit was the only blockchain social media option out there. I just felt that it was like an oligarchy and that it didn't provide the UI that I was looking for something to be globally adopted. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna take $6,000 in my own pocket. I'm gonna see if I can build something here. So I hired a dev team out of India, threw together the most crude MVP you've ever seen in your entire life. I was like, hey guys, take Reddit, copy it, and then we're just gonna throw a token on top of it. And they're like, okay, yeah, sounds good. And from there it's just totally exploded into something pretty powerful that I'm really excited about. And so Uptrennd now, just a blockchain-based social media platform that has a decent amount of traction. And I won't plug TrustSwap too hard or talk about the projects too hard, just my journey. I was in Uptrennd for about 1.5 years, and then still am, very much so. But then we were looking to do an OTC deal with some VCs to offload some tokens, pad the company bank account so we could continue with development. And they were saying, okay, yeah, so we'll take the tokens at a discount. And I said, well, if you're going to do that, we're going to vest them because we don't want you just dumping these tokens. And I'm like, so like, what smart contract do you guys use so that we can vest these tokens? You know, your job literally is to do these kinds of deals. So we don't have one. I'm like, that's hilarious. What do you use then? They said, we use a lawyer. I'm like, okay, well, how much do the lawyers charge? And they say, well, they charge about 5%, sometimes 10. I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, when I first got into Ethereum, man, like this seemed like the most simple smart contract. Like if this, then that, like, how does it get any simpler than this? So I'm like, F that. Like, I'm going to build my own smart contract, like an escrow service thing. And that was kind of like step one for Trust Swap. And then from there, it just kind of expanded into all these different holes that we saw, like team token locks, investor token locks, the list goes on and on, crypto subscriptions, of all these like massive gaping holes in the crypto space that just really weren't being serviced to allow for larger scale adoption. So that's what that whole thing has been about, Trust Swap. And then I've just been running that alongside Uptrennd as well. So both of them are very much passion babies, and I enjoy working with both of them.
I love it. Great introduction, everyone. And I guess I'll plug Draper, Goren, Holm and what we do over here. So Draper, Goren, Holm, it's an LA-based blockchain venture studio. We make really micro investment stage startups. We like to be the first check-in. So as a shameless plug, if you are working on anything super cool that's blockchain-based, it's in the fintech space, although we're not specifically, I guess, industry agnostic, hit us up. We want to hear from you. We want to learn more about what you're building. And with that being said, let's get into today's topic, okay? It's something that I'm personally really excited about, and that's blockchain-based social networks. And each of you have your own little experience between building SenseChat to building Uptrennd to finding projects to invest in and the golfing app that you're building, Alex. So I guess the reason why I wanted to explore this topic to begin with is because I think it's extremely relevant in how it aligns with some of the historical events we've all experienced, okay? So from Facebook's Cambridge Analytica scandal in 2018, right? We just had Twitter hack, okay? And now this platform that's taken everybody by storm, TikTok, and the Chinese government's involvement within the platform and the paranoia that it's created online, okay? What's the motivation? So let me start with this. What's the problem that all these social networks are experiencing, right? From the hacking side, from the data side, from the privacy side, and what's the motivation in creating a blockchain-based social network like you guys are building? And we could start with Jeff, and we could go from Crystal and then to Alex.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to preface, like I would want to say that there's inherently not necessarily a problem baked into any of these models, because I feel like I mentioned earlier, everybody can vote with their attention. We have so many options out there. So it's like, hey, listen, if you don't like the censorship with Facebook or YouTube, you have all of these options. You know, it's people are just, they're too complacent to make a change. And I think that's inherently the big problem. It kind of like lays at the human psyche level of complacency. But I think where I see that a lot of improvements could be done, you know, when we're looking at, say, TikTok or Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, is the aspect of freedom of speech and just censorship that's being imposed, and the way that the algorithms kind of create what's the best way to put this? Like you go into an echo chamber when you're on Twitter, you know, you just follow these things and the algorithm just pumps you full of all the things that you want to see, which I mean, on one side is great. And if if you want that, because for example, then I'm not going to see all these political views that I don't care about. But I feel like right now, social media has just become like this very big echo chamber in terms of what the individual wants to hear and what that corporation serving the content wants the individual to hear. And so I think that's where the big danger is. And I think we need to have more filters and ability and flexibility as a user to be able to opt in or opt out in regards to what we are seeing. Because I feel like that's the biggest thing today is if we don't have, the freedom of thought, then we can't have freedom of choice. And to have freedom of thought, you need differing opinions. And right now, you look at something like in the United States of America, you see how polarizing opinions and these two echo chambers, let's just call it right and left, because they're in their own echo chambers, they spin these wheels on how rooted in truth their own ideologies are. And so then when they intersect, it's just this massive infighting. And I think that's what the big problem is because they don't have opportunities to interact on a daily basis. They're just within their own clique or niche. So kind of long-winded way of saying, I think the biggest thing in my aspect or my mind is freedom of speech. And then of course, the ability to have, your data either private for you. Do you want to sell it? Do you want to monetize it? And then, your attention has value. So who's getting that value? Is it Facebook? Well, why isn't it us? So I think there's a lot of improvements that can be had on social media. And now, there's dozens of blockchain-based or decentralized social media platforms. So the options are out there for people. They just need to start diversifying.
For sure. And when it comes to creating a platform like Uptrennd, right? How does it, and I don't want to call them problems, but how do you guys kind of compensate for what you mentioned, right? From putting the data in the people's hands, allowing them to monetize their own data. How does that work exactly?
Yeah, for sure. And first off, it's always an iterative process. Like, we don't have the answers right off the start. We're always taking feedback, changing, adapting. So I think that's very important to note. But in terms of, it's just super simple, like freedom of speech. So if it's legal, it's on there. And then our algorithms, we don't have any fancy algorithms that are serving, only interests. It's very broad, very blanket. Things just get served as they come. It's more of a chronological timeline. Bill Ottman of Minds talks a lot about this. Bill Ottman, what a guy. This guy's unbelievable. He's got his head in the right and heart in the right place. So essentially, what on the monetization side, the way that we've kind of wrapped our way around it, and there's 1,001 ways to do it, but essentially we're just taking advertiser revenue and giving it back to the community through token buyback. So it's kind of like that token ecosystem is where the ad revenue comes in and back out to the people.
Got you. And in Crystal, what would you say, I guess, is the motivation for creating blockchain-based social networks? And you can tell us from the perspective of a peer-to-peer, a chatting perspective.
Yeah, well, Jeff nailed it though, right? You have misaligned incentives on the platform is probably the number one reason why users would care about a blockchain-based system. And then the other side of it is the freedom of speech, censorship, but really controlling of data, which is another big reason, because when you're talking about no longer just a human platform, but a platform that is integrating AI and bots in such a way where there's a fine line between prediction and influence, right? Now you're coming into dangerous territory, and especially if you look at basically what has happened in politics. Watch the Great Hack movie. That documentary exposes a lot of it. So I look at it from both of those two sides as well. But the reality is there's an inherent agreement that you're making with the platform if you're using a centralized platform. And that agreement is, I'm using your software, and in trade, you're getting all of the value of whatever it is that you're extracting from me, because I'm giving you my attention, and that attention is valuable, as is my data. And so I think that, when I've been following along really closely with this hilarity that's going on with Twitter and Trump getting so pissed off that they are actually now fact checking his tweets. And so he wrote this executive order, and the executive order said, it's the executive order for the prevention of online censorship. Okay, and so it sounds pretty good. You're like, oh, that's great. Great, platforms can't censor us. Trump's actually kind of doing the right thing. But if you read into it, what it is basically saying is that today, all of the platforms have protection. So Facebook, Twitter, they have a protection layer, which basically says that they are unbiased to the data that's on their platform. And because of that, they are completely immune from lawsuits. And so Trump is proposing with this executive order that actually, because they are now meddling in the data and they're choosing what is and is not real and what is and is not good, that they are no longer neutral and that they should be subject to lawsuits. Because today, the user can only sue another user. If you put something bad about me, I can sue you for slander. But if in his world, what will happen is that you could sue Twitter because you put it on Twitter. Adam wrote something about me on Twitter, and so instead of suing Adam, I'm going to sue Twitter. And that puts these massive incumbent platforms at major risk. So, I think that that's actually a really interesting step. The reason I'm bringing that up is because the question isn't really about, is blockchain the right technology? The question is, how do we decentralize these systems so that you don't have a central party making the determination of what gets shown, who it gets shown to, and, how to manipulate what information is coming out there. And I think that's why I really like things like Steam and Hive and the movement that they've been making, because there isn't a manipulative algorithm that's going on, though the trade-off is that we don't have discoverability as much, right? We have the sort of early internet feed of just everything in our face. But I kind of miss my old Twitter feed. I'm in crypto Twitter now. All of a sudden Twitter is like, oh, she talks about crypto. That is all we are going to serve. Nothing else on the planet exists. I'm like, please show me something about fitness. Like, I would love to see something else going on in my world. But these algorithms are like really fine tuning it for me. So, you know, I think we're building messaging, and that's one core component of a social network, but it's the private aspect of the social network. The social network in terms of broadcast content is another one. And the thing that makes Sense Chat unique actually is that we've brought in communities, because I think the thing that is missing here is that people inherently want to do what we're doing right now. We're a community talking about, you know, a particular topic. Like, we have an element of ephemeral conversation. We have an element of some sort of content conversation. But this is not really happening as well anymore on broadcast mediums. Like, Twitter and Facebook are mostly used for advertising, and in that, you know, going back to Jeff's point, the misaligned incentives are continuing to show. The people who are using the platform are not benefiting from the data that they're contributing to the platform. So my new favorite one for that is Voice. I don't know if you guys have signed up for that, voice.com, but that's another Dan Larimer project. You know, he now has created 3 of the top performing blockchains on the planet, BitShares, Steam, and EOS, and Voice is next. And I think, you know, I just signed up. Be super careful, because when you take your selfie, that's your profile photo, and that's it. And they do that because of identity. And so, you know, the KYC aspect of it is a little challenging, because at the beginning they were requiring an ID, and that's the only catch. The only catch to using Voice is you have to be a real human, and they want to verify you, because platforms like Twitter and Facebook are getting overrun with bots. Sense Chat, that's our mission too, no bots. But in order to figure out how to, you know, temper this, like, their number one thing is just KYC has to be a real human, has to only have one account, has to have a real name. And that's challenging, because every single action that you do on that platform is on the blockchain. So you better be prepared that if you're trolling, your trolling comments are going to be immutably stored for everybody to see transparently forever, you know? So I think there are a lot of facets of social networks. This is a really big topic, but those are the ones that are most important to me. And I think my underlying theme here is just, let's go closer to decentralization if we want true freedom of speech and lack of censorship.
Okay. And Alex, would you say there's anything else to add to that? The value that blockchain-based social networks create outside of the censorship element, outside of the freedom of speech?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to take a little bit of a different tack in the end, I think, on what blockchain can add to it, and it's from a data supply chain perspective, because I don't like the trade-off, or the idea of a trade-off between, okay, either our data gets used to, you know, create this tailored feed for us, or create these customized perfect experiences, or we shut off our data feeds entirely and nobody gets our data. And that's really, you know, and I go back and forth on this challenge, or this idea all the time, because there's definitely ways that you can shut off your data feeds. There's DuckDuckGo, which I love with all of my heart, but it gives you a materially worse experience than using Google. And back to what I was saying at the very start, we're not going to get 1 billion or 2 billion people onto these types of technologies by offering materially worse experiences. And so we need to be going a future direction with this, which in my mind is not shutting off data feeds, and it's not even, you know, monetizing your data necessarily in that world. It's actually creating different fundamentals and different infrastructure to aggregate all of your data back to you, and then use the type of technology that's currently being used on us to manipulate us into these commercial outcomes by the major platforms on ourselves. Like, weaponize it, miniaturize it, give us the ability to have a personalized AI, personalized cognitive computing. So when we walk into a virtual space that can essentially be generated and regenerated in real time without us realizing it, and trained based on our private data that we're sharing by using it, give us the tools and essentially put us on that machine speed playing field. So we're walking in and saying, that's a content rabbit hole, that's a bot, that's not true, that's correct, that's what you need to see in order to maximize your own goals, or, you know, just turn off your computer and go outside for a run for a little while. Like, we're sort of in this world today where we see these top 10% of these incredibly rich, detailed, immersive digital experiences, but we have no processing power or visibility into like the bottom 90% of what the actual infrastructure of our digital world is. And it's just this industrial scale data extraction machine, all with the idea of recreating our virtual spaces to manipulate us to certain outcomes. And most of the time it's not nefarious, it's for commercial purposes. If we say in our house that we just moved and we want to buy a home insurance, and we see an ad for home insurance 30 seconds later, we're 5% more likely to buy that ad or buy that home insurance. If we're driving around randomly outside and we see a billboard, we're 0.1% more likely. Like that, and that difference has incredible amounts of value. So the platforms that can manipulate and mold us and move us in the right directions towards those commercial outcomes are the ones who are going to accrue all of this dollars. So some of it's about extraction and learning from us, but a lot more of it, and especially in the last kind of 5-7 years, it's flipped from learning to manipulating and pushing. And essentially, everything we use for free, including this platform, there's a business model behind it, and all of that business model is this barter exchange that I think was fair at one point, and Crystal mentioned it, of all of my data in exchange for these web platforms. And so when we start to talk about the solutions that are coming today, that even any way that we can put the tiniest marker of value on data is a fantastic step in the right direction. Because right now everybody's like, it's too complicated, so just give me everything and I'll give you this one thing. We don't even have an equation. And so to start putting those pieces or putting those markers of value on the actual data that we're using. But I really think the solution to this is just flipping the model entirely and having solutions interact with my data instead of my data just being sort of vacuumed out of me by this 90% that I don't see into a whole bunch of different repositories that then do what they want with it. So the technology and where blockchain, in my mind, really comes into play, and this is a couple of projects that we've invested in, is about these vehicles to accrue data, create data, non-fungible assets, transmit data, get paid for data, have smart contract enabled access to data, and all of the pieces around the logistics of creating this data supply chain and this actual transparent data market. That's really where I sort of see the blockchain side of this working. Just last point, all of that in service should be way buried away from the user. Like they need to get Google, except they get paid. And that's when you get 1 billion people. Yeah.
So would you say creating a data supply chain like that, how does that, and I only bring this up because all three of you mentioned it, compromising the quality that you're getting, right? How can people, I guess, not compromise that, right? Are there any projects that you've seen currently that have done a really good job where, sure, they really accelerate in making all the data hyper secure, right? People own their data, but it doesn't come at the cost of getting the personalization that YouTube brings, that Facebook brings, that Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe, Alex, maybe you've seen that with all these data supply chains you've built.
So the short answer, and again, I love all of these projects, is there's not right now. And that's the reason why we Jeff mentioned it, that's the reason why we have a lot of these small, cool social networks that are really focused on the people who are interested and care about it. And the majority of people in the current world, I don't want to say they don't care about privacy, but they don't care about it enough to deal with the clanks and the frictions of the current platforms that allow you to operate in a more private manner. And so no, I think is the answer. And I don't think it's a certain amount of technology, but a certain amount of it is the paradigm of the deep infrastructure that we've built our digital world on right now. Like we've never even been introduced to our data platform or our data profile. Most of us have no idea that we even have sort of a digital data profile that exists out there. We just interact with this top 10% and never look a layer deeper. So there's a whole bunch of pieces that go into sort of forming that next thing, but some people will go into that 90%. But the majority of people will still live in this 10%. But for us as builders, we need to sort of create the tools that allow that 10% that people actually see and interact with to be just way better and way safer and get people to better outcomes and get people to more healthy outcomes and just a more healthy way of interacting with the world today. And there's a whole bunch of infrastructural stuff and societal stuff that comes along with that as well. And sorry, I know that's a long-winded answer.
No, that makes sense. And Crystal, would you have anything to add to that? Just because and Jeff as well, I know you guys, I mean, maybe Jeff is more content-focused platform. Crystal, you guys are more peer-to-peer. But how do you guys approach quality, considering that there is an outstanding compromise on it?
Yeah, we're just in the chat thread. I mentioned consensus-based censorship. We're right now we're experimenting with all different types of decentralized systems, including verification. So, you know, for me, one of the most important things with a community is that you figure out a system of governance that can be widespread and can continue to proliferate through the community with incentives, rather than having a government structure, which is just a few people representing many, which is always fundamentally broken, you know, in the end. So we're working on that side. We have, on content control, we're relying on the groups and the moderators, because as a messenger, our communities are basically chat groups. And so it's a little bit different, and Jeff can probably speak more to broader content. But for quality control of humans, we do verification. So we call it vouching, and you have to stake a token to vouch for someone else. If you vouch for that person, they get the coveted blue check mark, the thing that you wait forever for on Instagram and Twitter, and they generally tell you you're not famous enough anyways. You know, and that way people can vouch for each other. We have these concentric sort of circles of trust. And I think if we could figure out some system with content as well that works that way, you can have armies of moderators that are keeping quality control in check.
Okay, got you. And Jeff, how do you guys approach not compromising the quality of content?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like we want to have it as if like Macintosh and Windows had a baby. You know, like Mac is so nice with like clean, easy UI, and then Android is just so nice with customizable features. People can do what they want. And I think the best thing for us, at least, that we want to provide is like the option to have both, because I think people should be able to opt in or opt out. Like, we want to make it mom friendly, so mom can come in and start using this thing. So it needs to be like Apple, but then you also want to have customization so that some people who actually care about a lot of these features can then, you know, click around and fine tune. Okay, what do I want to monetize? What do I want to show? What do I want to see? Who do I want to listen to? Who do I want to talk to? I think so. It's like it's important to have a both for us. That said, I think that's like, I don't want to make a broad statement that that's how it should be all the time, because I think a lot of times these really niche platforms do incredibly well because they're so hyper-focused just in one area. Like, I think Mac does so well because it is just that. It's only clean. And I think Instagram does so well and TikTok does so well just because they're really specialized. So I think there's something to be said about specialization and people opting into that preference mode. But for us, we do what we would do, want to provide different options for people because we can.
So you're saying basically enhancing the tools of the content creator itself that gives, I guess, that doesn't compromise the quality of what they post. Is that what you're saying, from the flexibility of having different features, or am I picking up something else?
Yeah, my mistake. I wasn't clear enough. So I was more so talking about filtration systems. So like what kind of content you want to see. Yeah.
Got you.
No, I'm a mom, and I like having control of my content. So, you know, I think, well, so we actually call the content on our platform not safe for WhatsApp. So like anything that you want to be private, that you don't want to be stored forever on someone else's server or run the risk of interception, you know, while you're in transit. It's just, you know, NSFW, our new one for that is not safe for WhatsApp.
I like that.
I love it.
So,
Jeff, we kind of touched, I guess, about the influencer tool. So that's going to be the next thing I jump into, right? Creating an incentive for influencers. A lot of these platforms like YouTube, right? At least in the beginning, they did it really well, where they basically gave their content creators majority or a lot of the ad revenue that was generated, right? And you're seeing platforms like TikTok, when you do a live stream, people can, I guess, reward you with these little icons or whatever it may be that the content creators can capitalize on. How do blockchain-based social networks kind of approach that? You guys, all three of you kind of mentioned putting the control within the user's perspective, from the data, from the content creation, allowing them to monetize their own information. But How does that work? In theory, it sounds really nice. For a lot of people that listen, they might not know what that means exactly. Maybe you could break it down for us. We can start with Jeff, work from Crystal, and go to Alex.
Yeah, exactly. I think I haven't checked out TikTok lately, but I know Facebook has implemented, like, you can give stars, then that tips the content creator, and I forget what the split is, but let's say it's 50-50 or something. So, and I think that's actually a great start. I'm a big fan of that idea. So I think, in a lot of blockchain models, just the ethos is a little bit different, and we're a lot more competition hungry, and we don't have shareholders to appease with a bottom line revenue and the big green line going up. So we can distribute a lot more of that wealth. So I think that's a big competitive edge right now with these new up and coming, like, crypto social media startups or blockchain based social media platforms, is that there is a lot more wealth being distributed on the front end, kind of like as you mentioned with YouTube. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that companies can't go corrupt, because I think, look at Steemit. Steemit is the perfect example of this, in my opinion. It was, created by someone who a lot of people respect, and it was the first mover. It had all these amazing altruistic principles, and then one thing led to another, and look who owns it, Justin Sun, and they're censoring people, and it's a fucking joke, to put it, like, honestly. They've, like, not only demonetized, but literally taken money away from people. And that was like the golden egg of decentralization. And it's totally fucked now. And so I think there's really something to be said that, even if you're super decentralized, these systems can totally spin out of control. I kind of went off on a tangent here, but it's just kind of to say, like, any social media platform can say that they're heading in whatever direction, and say, hey, we're community governed. I mean, to a large extent, so is Steemit. And, here we are now. So to bring it back, I think it's cool that blockchain social platforms are paying more.
So talk to me from, I guess, the Uptrennd perspective. Your tagline is get rewarded to post, right? How does that work exactly? For those who aren't familiar with how the technicality behind it, from the distribution of tokens, right, to consuming the platform and earning tokens, how does that work exactly?
Yeah. Get paid to engage is kind of the one that we're going with. And so, like, obviously comments, posts, just even being active on the platform, you also earn tokens. And so we've gamified it a little bit, which I like. Everyone likes leveling up. So we have a level system. The higher your level, A, the more you earn, and B, the more you can give as rewards as well. So that's a little, like, the giving is a little bit off the Steemit and Hive model. But I think with Steemit and Hive, it's just such a disparity. Like, it's literally like a 7,000x difference between a new member and the largest member. And I think to me, that's insane. I don't think it should be that large. So we have a smaller disparity of 20x, just so that, if you've been on for longer, you know how to curate content a little bit more effectively. And so, yeah, obviously, like, you can post, you can comment, you can get upvotes. They're free to give, and you earn when you receive. You can then withdraw from the platform, cash it out on whatever exchange you want. So it's this really nice economy. And then you have advertisers who are purchasing tokens so that they can then advertise on the platform, or you have people who are purchasing tokens, depositing to the platform so they can level up, earn more right from the get-go. So it's this kind of, like, really nice, interesting economy coming in. And then soon we're going to have, it's kind of like essentially it's a UBI in kind of a weird way. So, like, when you reach certain levels, like level 20, level 30, level 40, you'll get certain percentages of this, the rewards pool every month of the advertisers. So when advertiser revenue comes in, we're going to be distributing kind of like a UBI. So my whole thing when I started Uptrennd was, like, I think it'd be really cool to be, I've always wanted to live my life off just, like, being me and doing what I'm passionate about, whether that's circus or acro yoga or whatever it is. And I'm like, if I could just post it and people could upvote it and I'd earn, like, that'd be super cool. And so that's what I wanted to do, where whether you're a musician, a blogger, whatever, an artist. And so, you're not always creating. So I think UBI is a really cool concept, bottom line. And we're excited to implement that. So you earn through what you do, and then you also earn just for being a citizen.
Love it. And Crystal, how do you guys approach that from the peer-to-peer chatting perspective? Rewarding communities for using Sense Chat and whatnot.
Yeah, man, I love the concept of, like, UBI or I guess, like, UEI, right? Like, your universal earned income, because you're kind of earning it as part of the platform. The main theme here is that if you think about the amount of money that a major social platform makes, like Facebook, for instance, you're talking about the same total GDP of an entire small country. Okay, so what do you think of when you think of that? You think of an economy, right? And that's the component that comes in with a blockchain system that is missing with these larger incumbent centralized systems. The concept of an economy in which you have a sort of fortuitous system between all of the people who are involved. So I'm saying that because when we add a token layer into our product, everyone's like, oh, why another token? What is the token for? Why am I earning this token? What do I want to do with another token? Well, actually, you want to help the economy of the entire product, because what that does is it helps the platform provide it back to you basically for free. Not only do you get the platform for free, which is what Facebook and Twitter are selling as their primary benefit, but you also then get to earn on top of it. So on Sense Chat, you go to earn every day. You can hit the button. Basically, you're verifying that you're a human by doing so. It's helping us to secure the network. And by doing that, you earn for the next 24 hours tokens. Those tokens can be spent doing things around the system. You can send them to each other. You can upvote content. You can start a channel. And so it is constantly going back into the community pool. It's not that the company is trying to extract the value. The company is trying to put the value back in. And if the token gets used more, the volume and the demand equal more value. And so everyone benefits. When you pull those tokens out, if you want to, and you want to use them for something else, then you have a value in another system. And that's the beautiful thing about crypto and the idea of exchange. But I think that's the underlying theme for me, is that we need to start thinking about our online communities like economies, because that is what they are. Our time is the most valuable thing that we have. So if we're going to spend hours of it a day on all of these different content networks, we should be absolutely sharing in the rewards, and I think it's a mistake to think that just because one platform has billions of users, you shouldn't start with a smaller platform. Like, absolutely, I will be on Uptrennd, and I've just gotten my horrible selfie uploaded onto Voice because I really want to see how I can participate in these economies. I'm really interested in that. I'm in Puerto Rico. Like, I would much rather be on a small, interesting island than like a participant in just like a really large thing that I'm kind of drowning out in. And that's kind of how I feel about the larger social networks at this point. It's a race to the bottom. Even if you're paying for advertising, it's just such low conversion and it's such low value. It's a black hole, and on the other side are a lot of people lining their pockets that are never going to be you.
Right. And go ahead, Alex. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to build on that. And I love the idea of thinking about networks as essentially the framework and foundations of an economy. Different governments have different standards of transparency and different abilities and things that they do well. But essentially, that should be how we're thinking about our platforms. We're trying, and governments in general and economies are trying to solve collective action problems, of trying to make something that's bigger than individuals can be on their own. And so essentially the platform itself should operate like an individual self-sovereign economy. So instead of that being the platform and you being a user or a client, that is, the users are the actual platform itself. So the platform becomes essentially a marketplace that maybe takes a fee out of every transaction that happens, but every transaction is happening through the rules that are governed on this platform. And so the governance that actually is placed within it, and the governance that's actually forming these actual rules, isn't like it is on social networks today, where it's essentially, again, back to my kind of top 10%, 90% analogy, where you see only the bare minimum and maybe some dollars come at you in some star way that you don't understand the math of or don't understand the behind. But I'm with you, Jeff. That's a fantastic start of even allowing people to pierce that veil, that little amount. But effectively having everybody operating on the same playing field where there's not this incredibly massive power discrepancy. And so, in a perfect world, like Facebook has a shitload of rules and ways that things happen, reasons why you see content, all of their algorithms, all of that stuff is completely hidden from everybody. In a perfect world, or in a perfectly transparent world, we have a way to have absolute transparency down to the code level if we want it, where we're seeing the stuff that we want to see, and there's a reason why Facebook and Google are some of the most powerful networks in the world. where we can see why we're seeing all of that stuff and tie it back to our own things that we're contributing to the network and our own things that we're creating to the network. But at the same time, all of the value that's flowing around and being created by us interacting with each other, all the value that's flowing around and being created by us, buying things or doing things on this platform, is being shared back to the actual creators of it, and according to a set of rules that we all can see and are transparent. And that's kind of a utopia view of this, but it's essentially Facebook except smash the walls, free up all of the algorithms that are operating inside it, and then make it actually consumable to the user and then split out part that value according to actually who's generating it. Because all these platforms really are today is advertisers connecting with users and a whole bunch of misdirection in the middle. So break that apart, connect those people directly, and then also try and move that away from just advertisers connecting with users, family members connecting with each other, health connecting with each other, try and get it away from just dollars that are trying to be optimized for these platforms. We have biometrics now. Can we optimize a platform for health? Can we optimize it for wellness? Can we start optimizing for different things that aren't the actual dollar value of the platform? That's where we're spending a lot of our time now, is like, what's the next paradigm that we can use machine learning to maximize for that's not dollars? And that's a whole separate conversation.
Yeah, I love that you say that, Alex, because actually that it's a good point that if you're selling something, Instagram is probably a great place for you. If you're selling something, Facebook is probably a great place for you, because if you have a product and you know how to leverage advertising properly, you are able to extract those dollars. It's just simply that. And it's not a bad thing either. I'm not saying I'm going to leave Instagram. They finally verified me after I had impersonators for months and months. I'm not influential at all. And that was the rub. It's like, oh, you don't have 100,000 followers. You're not a real, like a public figure. But actually I am enough that people know that, I can easily extract crypto out of people. And I won't leave the platform though, because even though that's annoying to me, and even though I don't like that they steal my data, I definitely won't have a private conversation there. And even though I'm not a big fan of the fact that they hook me every time with those damn advertisements for certain things, and I'm like a purchaser, it still is one modality. It's like, I'm not going to stop shopping, but I need to know that that's what I'm doing when I'm there. And I think the fundamental problem that happens with manipulation through algorithms is that when we go to Facebook, we don't realize that it's going to manipulate our emotional state. And the biggest flaw that has happened in our society today has fundamentally come from advertising telling you you are not good enough and you do not have enough. And those are the negative modalities that we get into. When we get into Facebook, if we were able to avoid that trap, and if we were able to press a button to turn that off, we could have a different experience. So I think that's the sort of balance that we need to strike. It'd be great if they gave us that option. But
yeah, and I would love, and I love the idea of sort of hijacking this existing manipulative infrastructure that we have, but reorienting it to better outcomes. Like, I would love to just like mindless garbage my way through Facebook and then just end up jacked and with like great family relationships at the end, right? Like, I'd love to be manipulated into doing things that are better for me, but Facebook's manipulating me for the dollars. I want a platform that's manipulating me for myself or the health or something else that's different. And obviously that's a way different, deeper layer of how we reorganize and get away from fucking Friedman economics and shareholder value maximization and all of that shit. That's such a fascinating place to go. And we can calculate all this stuff now.
You can hack it yourself though. So one thing Instagram is good at is that you can actually hack it yourself. If you like enough things and you actually really pay attention to what you're liking. So Facebook added different reactions. Facebook wanted to know, when are you angry? When are you sad? One thing I would say is I don't use any emoji ever on Facebook other than a like or a heart, because I only want them to know when I'm in a good mood, because the second I tell them I'm in a bad mood, they are going to manipulate me to the end. So that is why I think Instagram is better. You heart everything, right? And if you can have better abs as a result of like watching Instagram every day, like you're right, like you're doing a good thing. You're telling your brain like, a positive message. And I think it is possible to go on that flow on some of the platforms, but they're really dangerous. Like YouTube, you can start with Tony Robbins and you can end up with, feeling terrible about yourself and needing plastic surgery. You just have no idea where it's going.
And the more, what I find so fundamentally interesting and depressing and instructive at the same time is that the more you take healthy actions on all of these platforms, or healthy / privacy focused actions, if everybody does those things, those platforms don't exist anymore. Like House Party is a perfect example. It exploded during COVID. And everybody was just like, fuck it, I don't have anything to do. I need to talk to people. I need to interact. I need to play games, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, everybody downloaded it. Nobody read the privacy policy. Same old story as every other app that we download. And then it enables your GPS. It follows you wherever you're going. And then all of these social distancing trackers started popping up with like 139 million data points from continental United States. It was like, pretty sure 139 million people didn't opt into this tracking device that's going on right now. But there's ways to use House Party with turning off your data feeds, with not putting in your correct information. You can sneak into the house instead of advertising that you're there, blah, 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 blah. But if everybody does that, House Party doesn't exist. And so we have this sort of fundamental flaw in our current model of this privacy versus profit, where each unit of data and each action is one-to-one correlated. The more identifiable, the more relevant, the more high value it is, then the more profit people make from it. And the less identifiable, the less private, or the less it exists, then the less profit they make from it. And so even when we have kind of Facebook saying, like, oh, privacy is the future, as long as they're operating on this quarterly earnings cycle where they need to report revenues and profits, like that fundamental, it will never change. And you can only regulate so much when there's a fundamental flaw in the way that these networks are built. And so that's such a weird paradigm that I don't know exactly how to wrap my head around the next step of, except for switching from this extractive data paradigm to a shared data paradigm, because my thesis is that shared data is exponentially more valuable than extracted data in the first place. So the platforms that effectively incent people to share data and effectively harness that shared data will naturally dominate the extractive data platforms and end up winning this kind of economics game anyways. But I still think we're ending up in the economics game, which is a dubious long-term value proposition.
Yeah. I want to go ahead and jump into the QA just because we only have a few more minutes. So let's go with this one. So, and this might be, I guess, a really complicated question, but I want to approach it from a general perspective, okay? And maybe Jeff, because you operate a social-based platform, right? Maybe this might be more aligned in your alley. So can YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, et cetera, can they easily adapt the blockchain-based infrastructure and take advantage of the pros that you guys mentioned?
I mean, we're looking at Reddit right now. They brought in the donuts, and so like donuts are like an ERC20 token right now, and I think they're monetized. They're probably trading on a couple dexes, so I think that's cool. A little bit of monetization. Obviously, Reddit's not paying for that. It's kind of like an in currency thing. I'm not 100% familiar with the mechanics of it. I think to an extent, for sure, they can, and I think there's a high likelihood that they will. I think to what extent, though, is what the big question is going to be. I think at the end of the day that, they have this fiduciary responsibility to shareholders to continually increase revenue and profitability. So if you start giving away a lot of that profitability, to the public, it's a hard story to sell to the investors and, to the P over E ratio. So I'll be hesitant to see them like really make drastic leaps and bounds, but I think, there is a movement happening, and so you can see Reddit is kind of hopping on that movement a little bit. And it's not like Facebook is blind; they're starting up with Libra. A lot of these platforms are very aware of what's happening, and I think, they're not. Let's put it this way: like I think a lot of old platforms or like brick and mortar stores died because they weren't adaptable and they didn't see what was coming and they weren't willing to change. I think the platforms of today, like Facebook and Reddit, they are adaptable and ready for change and malleable. To what extent, I think that's to be seen. But and to what level of ethics? Like I think even just today, Facebook announced they have a new policy change coming in, and it said, hey, it was a blanket statement. I forget the exact wording, but it said, if what you're saying could be a liability to Facebook, we're potentially going to just start deactivating your account. And so for me, I'm like, holy crap. Like, I talk about crypto, potentially I talk about contrarian political beliefs, potentially I talk about this and that, like alternative health. What's going to happen to my account? They could just shut me down, and I have nothing to say about that. So it'll be an interesting next few years to see how the landscape evolves and develops. I think the biggest indicator on how this is all going to shake out is how much do these platforms continue to censor, and just censor totally, like not maliciously, but just as a blanket sense with no repercussion. So I think that's the one that I'm really looking for, is how much are they going to continue to censor, and can people still be free to speak their mind without getting deplatformed?
Interesting. And Crystal, I guess you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I would add to that my thought on this is that like no one kills the goose that lays the golden egg, right? So think about like, why would Fortnite get removed from the App Store? It's the largest performing app basically of all time. And outside of social networks, forget that for a minute, but like games. Why would they remove it? Because Apple will not give up their percentage for anything.
Right.
It doesn't matter if you have 1 billion downloads. We don't care, because you're taking away the golden egg, right? You're taking away the whole goose. So that's the thing about Facebook that I think is the rub. So Libra, yeah, okay, they dipped their toe into crypto for a second, but right. What were they threatening? The Federal Reserve. Like, they were creating a stable coin. They had zero plans of giving you some currency for your posts. Like, that was not part of the plan. So the way that we're talking about creating a healthy economy and a virtuous cycle that helps benefit the users is not the way Facebook was thinking about it. Facebook was like, ooh, crypto, we could probably create the new dollar. We have more wallets essentially than all central banks combined in America. So I think that the answer is like, could they 100% because they have 20,000 engineers? Will they? No, because it's going to threaten the thing that lines the pockets of the people that make the decisions in the boardroom. And I think that's the fundamental flaw. And the same exact thing happened to Wikipedia, by the way. Unfortunately, Wikipedia was always built on the wrong model. Wikipedia relies on donations and relies on content providers constantly contributing. The only thing you get out of Wikipedia, if you contribute hours of your time creating content, is a banner ad asking you for donations, because they still can't pay for their infrastructure. So, that is not the right model. And Everpedia came along to sort of solve that problem and be the next evolution of that, and to show you what could happen if you would be able to be incentivized with tokens. I think at the core, it has to start in the base layer of the business model. And for all of these other ones, it's just not there. TikTok is unfortunately going to get just totally, steamrolled with reels on Instagram. And I just don't see any of them ever adopting or changing their business model for that adaptation.
Cool.
So I just want to give my ultra cynical take on Libra. In order for Facebook to give you a stable coin, they need your KYC information, which is a layer deeper of information than they get from you already. Now it's, instead of just your username and everything you do online, it's your passport, it's your proof of address, it's your banking history. It's a layer deeper into the data that ties you more to a real person and prevents you from creating fake accounts. And so, when you're tying it to WhatsApp, which is obviously Facebook, and then Instagram, which is obviously Facebook as well, it could have some basic friction removing benefits of international payments that has a lot of frictions built into it, and has a certain scale that's required, which does lead to exclusion. And so I agree, Facebook is this international network that could theoretically do that. But I think the juice is not worth the squeeze on that particular platform. And I'm glad Libra is not really doing much, so it's sort of a thing that was a hype story for a little while. So I guess I wanted to jump back to Jeff's points of the brick and mortar stores evolving to the platforms of today, and the platforms of today can evolve into the platforms of tomorrow. Where I have some challenges with it is that the platforms of today destroyed the brick and mortar stores because they came up with better, faster, more optimized, more streamlined, harsher, more aggressive ways to make money. And they did it at a machine speed, and they did it on a scale that brick and mortar just simply could not do. So I'm very confident in today's company to continue to evolve ways to make more money, because we've essentially turned our companies into machines, and we've given them a maximization characteristic, and then we've cut out every human fail-safe possible to make an action that doesn't necessarily optimize because of some morality construct that we have. So I'm very confident that our platforms can do that. Where I'm less confident of is can we, as the meat computers that have created these machines, can we give them a new thing to optimize for? And can we reprogram the underlying infrastructure to create this machine speed world that's not just creating better and better and better mousetraps that are still moving towards the same, not that productive outcomes of maximizing shareholder value and essentially manipulating our attention. And so I think we can. I have eternal optimism in the human spirit and our ability to do it. And there are no evil monsters. There are no evil AIs. It's all just humans. And we just need to think better and program better and build better systems. And we can do it because we've done it before. We've built better systems, and we're getting to sort of the end of this paradigm, and we just need to think really, really, really hard and build the infrastructure about the next one.
Love it. Guys, what a kick-ass discussion. Thank you so much for your time. Before we break off into the networking session, can you each tell us where we can find you on social media, where we can locate your platform, and just plug yourselves really quick? Alex can start, and we'll end with Jeff. We'll go to Crystal, Jeff.
Sure. So bicameralventures.com is our main site. I'm writing a collaborative Git book called The Lizard and the Machine, Scaling Human Integrity in a Machine Speed World at lizardandmachine.com. I'm on Twitter. I don't really tweet that much. It's AlexM_Bicameral. I'm more on LinkedIn, just Alex McDougall. And hit me up whenever. I love all of these fucking crazy conversations. I did a couple Burning Man panels earlier today. Which got very, very interesting and in-depth. Actually, with the guy who produced The Great Hack, one of the producers of that. So that's going to be fucking super interesting. And coming out later this week, I think.
Thanks, Alex. Crystal, where can we find you?
I am at Crystal Rose on Twitter. I'm at Crystal Rose Pierce on Instagram. I don't have a lot of followers there, so if you want to peek into my private life, I am verified. You will find me with a blue check mark. If you at me on Twitter at Crystal Rose, I generally will chat with you. I really like Twitter for that reason. Yeah, you can find me on Sense Chat very, very soon. So if you want to get early into Sense Chat, it's just sense.chat and sign up for the early access. We are going to be letting in the first round of 10,000 people in the next coming weeks. So here, rounding out summer in September. And that's where you'll find me to chat with. I will be dropping off of Telegram officially and other platforms. And just, FYI, Telegram is not encrypted, guys. If anybody thinks it is, it's not. So find me on the more secure messenger. I'll see you on Sense Chat. And thank you so much. This is really, really excellent. You guys are super smart, and I really love chatting with you.
Very cool. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, and then pretty easy for me. Hit me on Twitter. That's I'm pretty active there, and probably Uptrennd. Those would be the two best places to get at me. And yeah, it was fun. I really appreciate everyone coming in and talking. I loved it.
Love it, guys. Thank you. And I guess my shameless plug: you can find us at Draper Goren Holm on Twitter. You can find me at Levy Chain. It's not a blockchain. It's just something out of the ordinary. And before we break off into the networking session, for those who haven't been to the networking session, are new to blockchain and booze, it's a lot of fun. What's going to happen, I'm going to end presentation mode, okay, and we're all going to disperse into these colorful tables where we'll be able to bounce from chair to chair and meet people from all over the world. So in order to do that, when I end presentation mode, make sure you have your mics on and make sure you have your cameras on, okay? So guys, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.